Harwood. So I've done a little bit of digging around and I've discovered.
Ricky Grove. Fog comes in on little cat feet.
Phil Rice. This is the best film that I've seen all year and maybe ever.
Damien Valentine. Use the machinima, Luke.
Hello and welcome to And Now for Something Completely Machinima, the podcast about machinima, virtual production, and related technologies. I'm here with my co-hosts, Damien Valentine and Tracy Harwood.
Hello.
Hello.
Ricky is off in the desert collecting cacti, but he will be back with us at our next episode. So we're going to do our best to fill in here without him. And I think this week we're just going to jump straight to a pick that is a little maybe out of the ordinary for us. It's certainly the platform that it's on is a little out of the ordinary for our normal picks, because this one, at least with the way that Tracy shared it with us, it's on Twitter. And it has a familiar character. So tell us about it, Tracy.
Absolutely, yeah. This has been released only on X. It's only available on X. I think it's been called Shinto Ritual, as far as I can use Google Translate. That seems to be what it's called. It's by Sumoguri, 2323. Sumoguri is what I'll call him or her. And it was released on the 23rd of November. Actually, this film was one that was shared with us by Jason Boomer. You may or may not know Jason. Jason was actually responsible for setting up the UK chapter for the Rooster Teeth community way back when. Anyway, Jason saw this on Twitter and thought it might be a fun one for us to discuss. Now, it's made in the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom system, and was released, like I said, on 23rd of November. So it's not been out all that long. When Jason sent it over to me, he kind of mentioned that he hadn't actually seen an awful lot of Zelda-based machinima, so it stood out. And then I sort of thought about it, and actually I haven't really seen an awful lot of
Me neither, yeah.
Zelda-based machinima either. So I think this is really quite an interesting one for a kind of a number of reasons. What struck me first of all, actually, was just how many views this had racked up. And it currently stands, as we record today, at about 2.8 million views. But I think part of that is actually because of the timing too. So the plot for this is it's a Godzilla story, or what some folks are actually calling Zonizilla or Mecha Godzilla, because it's made with Zonai parts in the game. Basically, Godzilla is attacking Lurelin village. He's rebuffed by this defense, as all Godzilla attacks are. And obviously that doesn't work because it never does. And so Godzilla then returns to the ocean, presumably to sleep it all off in its nuclear-infused hideaway, wherever that is, deep in the Pacific. Now, what I really liked about this is actually the editing and the sound effects, which make it a great homage to Toho and forgive my pronunciation here, Ishihiro Honda's Godzilla films. It is actually a fairly faithful recreation of Godzilla rampaging through Tokyo in that very first 1954 film. And obviously, I think the sound effects are all from that kind of time period, which is fantastic. It makes it all quite iconic, I think. But it's actually the editing that really stands out in this short, or it certainly is for me. And as to the point that I made about timing, I think that's important for a few reasons. I suppose primarily because there's been this kind of massive upsurge of renewed kind of interest in Godzilla films in recent years. The Shin Godzilla directed Hideaki Anno, is that correct? Which won in a number of the categories at the Japanese equivalent of the Academy Awards in 2016. Then there's Godzilla -1, which was recently released, and next year, sort of later this year, we've also got Godzilla and Kong, which I'm quite looking forward to seeing, to be honest. And then, of course, there's also that Apple TV Plus series, which is running at the moment called Monarch Legacy of the Monsters, or Legacy of Monsters, which actually I am thoroughly enjoying, although generally
Are you watching it?
I am watching it, yeah.
It's in my queue. Yeah, I was
No,
wondering.
it's really great. I've got to say, I have never really been into the fandom for this particular monster. And part of the reason for that, I think, is because I remember as a kid seeing these really dated, black and white. I don't know whether they were the films or whether it was a TV series we had here in the UK of it. I don't really remember. I just remember it being a really rough, rough kind of very dark, very black and white, and in a language I didn't understand, with writing that went far too quickly across the screen for me to follow as a young child, basically. Um, I guess really for that very reason, I suppose I was a bit more interested in King Kong than ever I was Godzilla. Now, as I understand it, Sumoguri, which ironically means skin diving or free diving in Japanese, he's basically used this ultra hand building mechanic feature in the game to create and animate the objects, such as the items in the set and the monsters. So this film is something that he's created from scratch in the game, as well as the explosions, the effects, the camera angles, and the timings and the sound effects are really quite outstanding, I think. Um, it's quite interesting to note, actually, that this film is being badged as a bit of a marker in Zelda as well. Some have described Tears of the Kingdom as potentially a Fortnite-like environment, which I think is it's probably a little difficult to appreciate from this, and given that it actually doesn't really have the creative freedom that environments like Minecraft or Fortnite has in such abundance, I think it's a bit of a stretch too. But nonetheless, that's what folks are saying. I've also seen one of the forums say that uh, partly that there isn't really an awful lot of machinima in this either. It's because that it's never really been used for its creative elements in all the 40 years that the game's been available, which kind of makes sense, I suppose. Um, However, I think another one of the timing aspects of this is actually to do with the game itself, because that was released to quite a lot of hype last year. It became the fastest selling game in the Zelda series, and indeed of the whole year when it was released in May, and it's won a whole clutch of Game of the Year awards. So I think this machinima was always going to find an appreciative audience, whatever the platform was that it found itself on. I think it kind of tapped into that sort of cult classic Japanese thematic kind of scene very cleverly, actually, and well deservedly, because I do think it's a really it's a cool edit of it. I've actually dug out the original Japanese trailer for the 1954 film, which was released by Toho, and it's on YouTube. And obviously, there's a whole ton of material out there that you can kind of dig into. But I was really interested to look at that because, and this is something I had never really fully appreciated. In that trailer, it actually makes reference to King Kong as well. And what you see there is that what they're making reference to is the special effects that are used. These effects in Godzilla are better than the ones in Kong, so you've got to watch this film. That was how it was released in Japan, certainly. Um, which actually I think adds a really interesting layer to the Godzilla and Kong film that's upcoming too. So yeah, probably more than you might have thought I would have had to say about this, given that I know next to nothing about the Godzilla lore. But I was really impressed with this. What did you think?
Well, you always find a way to dig into the details and find all kinds of surprising things, even when it's something like this. So,
Yeah,
not
sure.
surprised at all. For me, I'd heard, excuse me. I'd heard that this Zelda game had this build mode. I never played the game myself. Um, and I didn't realize you could do things like this. Like they've actually built this Godzilla robot thing. Um, and it looks like you look at it, you know it's meant to be Godzilla. It's not an exact perfect replica of Godzilla, but you recognize it. Um, I didn't know you could do that. And obviously, there's some kind of scripting thing in it to make it move. I don't know how that works because this film was made on a Nintendo Switch, which is one of these,
Yeah.
which is not much bigger than a phone. So there's a touchscreen keyboard that comes up on it. So I don't know if you can do any coding or however that works, but it moves. And then they've got these tanks that shoot lasers. I think the creator of this film obviously built those in the game with this building tool and built the attached lasers to them, and they work because when you see them fire, there's explosions in the background when they're hitting their targets. Um, so I didn't know that the game had that extensive um, range of tools, so it's quite impressive. And also, we haven't seen much machinima made on the Nintendo Switch, so again, that's quite impressive as well. And that's surprising that we haven't because um, if you press, I think it's this button, which you can't, this button here,
Hmm.
it will start recording. You press it once, you take a screenshot. If you hold it down, you can record video. It saves it straight on the device, and you can then transfer it onto your PC. So
Hmm.
you've got a handheld machinima tool. So it's kind of surprising. Although maybe it's because it's hard to take out the game interfaces and things like that. But um, I just thought we'd have seen more anyway. So yeah, surprising for that as well. I said a few weeks ago, I always admire people using games to make something that the game was not designed for. And obviously, Godzilla was not what the Nintendo had in mind for Zelda. Um,
Quite.
so yeah, I thought it was really good. I liked the old style sound effects. I wasn't sure if they just lifted that audio
Oh,
straight
yeah.
from an old film or if
Oh,
they
I'm sure they did.
posited
Yeah.
it together, but I thought it was very well done. And the footage, the video footage they had was timed nicely with that audio. So they spent a lot of time lining all up with the editing and so again, a lot of work put into that. So yeah, I think it's a great choice. Very different. And also not just on the platform that's being on Twitter, but using a game that we've never seen before from Machinima on uh, a games console we very rarely see. So I think it really stands out as a very unique film that's excellently made. And yeah, I want to see more Switch Machinima now.
Yeah. We'll get Jason on to tracking it for us, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son has this Zelda game, placed it on the Switch, and he let me watch over his shoulder a little bit while he played and stuff. And it's just some really, really gorgeous environments, big wide open spaces. I think his favorite thing about the game is something that's not featured in this trailer, which is the game's original soundtrack. The score is just beautiful, just really, really evocative and beautiful, and kind of morphs and responds as you move to different parts of the world. It's a neat system that they've got to implement the music. Yeah, when I first was watching this, I didn't look at the tweet above it, like the actual text, so I didn't see the hashtags, and I was watching it thinking, what in the world is this made in? And I figured, okay, it's not quite sophisticated enough to be a pure Unreal Engine creation, which I know, Tracy, you tend to spot those before any of us. That was my first thought. Well, maybe it's that, but no, it's not quite there. So it must be a video game, but what game? So it was only after I'd watched it that I saw the Zelda hashtag. And yeah, I had no idea that this game can had any sort of modes that would enable you to do that at all. It is very interesting. And what a neat experiment it must have been for the person making this to set out to envision. Yeah, let's recreate this kind of iconic Godzilla scene. I mean, not necessarily shot for shot, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The something to go along with that soundtrack, which I grew up on this stuff. Okay, the Godzilla and to a lesser degree King Kong for some reason. It was more Godzilla and that whole pantheon of monsters that he would fight at different times, those the old movies where it's just, you can tell it's just a guy in a suit. Oh, I just
Yes.
loved it. Just cheesy, just a guy in a rubber suit, stuff that would basically make, early Doctor Who look like a technology upgrade. This is how low tech this was, right? It was like, oh, I just loved it. I just loved it. I had I had Godzilla toys. I would play with dinosaurs and pretend they're Godzilla in my sandbox as a kid. I mean, it was just, and so and this was on every Saturday. Like there was cartoons, of course, Saturday morning cartoons. And then on WGN out of Chicago, every Saturday was like a marathon of monster movies.
Oh,
And this old style, low budget monster movies mostly. There was always a Godzilla movie, and then sprinkled some other stuff in there. Actually, the Google this sometime if you're interested, but there was a host of that program on WGN, the station in Chicago, called Son of Svengoolie,
oh,
and he was basically the MC for these Saturday movie marathons. So he would get on and introduce the movie, and then like an intermission point, he'd get on and do more stuff, and he would do comedy sketches and all this other stuff. And as far as I can understand, he was pretty much a one-man operation. Like it's about the quality of like what cable access would be, like it was just as low budget as these movies. And he's dressed in kind of a vampire costume and making these corny jokes. It was the best thing ever. If you know anybody who's grown up in the Chicago area and was my age, they'll know who Son of Svengoolie was. It's still talked about today. Just classic. So
yeah.
hearing that soundtrack, like I instantly recognized it. Like I didn't have to look it up or see what I knew instantly what it was from. And it's very evocative.
Yeah.
And the sounds and all of that from those films, nothing but pleasant memories for me watching it. So to be honest with you, I had trouble kind of sitting back and analyzing and for critical purposes the film because I was just too caught up in the moment it was given me, and I'm not sure if that's what the intent was. For all I know, the filmmaker would hear that and go success.
Yeah.
Because it was a feeling delivery system, that 1 minute and 40-second little film there. So I don't know. I just don't really care much about how it was made. I probably should as a machinima filmmaker. I should care. I just don't care. I loved it. It's like I want to just pat the person on the back and say thank you. It was nice.
That's
It
great.
was just really nice. Yeah.
You and I think
great
the
pick.
2.8 million others that have watched it.
Yeah, yeah. All I could see from on our board here is that it has close to 34,000 likes, and I thought that was impressive.
Yeah.
But you're saying the views is over almost 3 million. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially for Twitter as a platform,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Seems like it's almost nothing nowadays for a video on YouTube to be able to hit the millions. It happens. It's like, oh, neat. On Twitter, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh.
And you know what's interesting? He has got a YouTube channel, he or she, but he's not put it up there.
Huh.
It's only on X as far as I could see.
That probably helped the numbers then. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, anyway, great pick, Tracy.
I would have loved to have heard what Ricky would have had to have said about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get him to
Have a look at it.
to have a look and just weigh in and kind of do an Instagram version of his reviews on these films that he misses. That would be kind of fun, actually. I could encourage him to just do it with his phone, and then we can incorporate those later in the videos.
From where did you say he was this week? He's in the desert, is he? With cacti?
He's in the desert collecting cacti. That's right.
Yeah. I'd love to see what sort of cacti he's picking up.
He's looking for the prickly pear, but I told him, look, just get cacti and
Well, he's going to use it for his ice. When next time he goes ice fishing, he's going to put the cacti in the water
Yes.
and spike the fish.
That's right.
Not
That's
a bad
right.
idea.
Yeah.
We have a
So,
second pick as well, don't we? And I guess
yes,
you're going to be
yes.
modest about this one. But shall I let shall I introduce this one and go through my thoughts, or do you
Yes,
want to tell us about it to start with?
go ahead.
I knew you were going to say that. So, uh, I have picked, or we have picked, this film that Phil has made. In actual fact, you released it, I think, on the 10th of November, so it's been out a little while.
Yeah.
Um, it's called Lobachevsky, Tom Lehrer, The Secret to Success in Mathematics. And it's a typical Phil humor style film. Um, so one would expect, and indeed there is no reason not to expect it. Great editing in this, of course. And obviously what Phil has used here is public domain audio recording of one of Tom Lehrer's classic songs. Um, but I think it's what you've done with it that's really quite fascinating. Um, I actually found it a lot of fun, and being an academic, of course, it demonstrates the kind of poetic telling of a Russian-esque tale of life in the pursuit of knowledge in academe. And it's highlighting some of the key challenges that researchers face and some of the less ethical ways, I suppose, that the publish or die mantra has kind of been dealt with. But all that aside, at the time that this particular song was written by Lyra, which I think was in the early 1950s, America would have been in the midst of the Cold War. So
Hmm.
there's this really interesting undertone of political intrigue represented in what was being said in this song. And at the time, of course, there was great deliberation over spying and secrets being plagiarized from the Americans. And on top of that context, the song was also written when Lyra was himself struggling to write his doctoral thesis in mathematics at Harvard. And he never did complete that. Believe me, I'm pretty sure that many students can relate to Lyra's sentiment in conducting research, which is kind of represented in this song. So there's quite a lot of in-jokes, I think, that's sort of an undertone here. And so I guess that may well have led to him being distracted by kind of contemporary cinema during that sort of time period as well. Probably as a way to escape his studies, which seems to be the reference to Lobachevsky's colleagues' research being published and then made the subject of a Hollywood film with a well-known actress, Ingrid Bergman, um, and mention of this kind of infamous studio, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, um, all of which I think is really quite interesting. Um, all of that said, though, I think the actual inspiration for the song wasn't that. I think it was Danny Kaye's routine that honored a Russian actor, Stanislavski, that was the original inspiration. Um, Question for you then, Phil. How did you manage to mash these different kind of contextual underpinnings together? Because there's really lots of hidden depths in the song which make it a rich source, and it's written with such precision in lacing these things together. But you've really captured quite a lot of that. And I just wondered, how did you do it?
Nice, simple question. Uh,
Yeah, sorry about that.
okay, so well, first of all, how the idea came to use this song. Um, I wasn't unfamiliar with Tom Lehrer's work. I don't think I certainly did not understand or hadn't heard all of his catalog, but there were some that were familiar to me. And when I heard this song again, prior to picking it as the subject of the film, I felt like I'd heard it before, but when I was very young. And so a lot of the humor, uh, I only caught I guess the low end, the low hanging fruit of the humor, the kind of silly way that he played with the accent and things like that. That was all that really I was able to absorb. And so then I discover it now, 25 years post collegiate, and just so much more of it. It all made sense, But how I discovered it was someone, I can't remember who, but it was actually someone personally told me about Tom Lehrer making his catalog of all his songs public domain. And basically they sent me the link and says, hey, they're all available for download on his website. Go get it. You got to hear this. It's great. And so I just basically when that happened, which the first batch of releases of that was close to 2 years ago, probably about 2 years ago from now. And then later he released even more about 1 year ago. But I just went and just downloaded them and just put it into a folder that I've got that I kind of call my inbox, which is basically just stuff I don't have time to look at right now, but I will get to it eventually, so I can put it here and feel safe that this will get reviewed eventually. That it just sat in there for like almost a year. And when I was going through kind of doing some housekeeping and cleaning up some files and clearing out the inbox, I thought, oh, you know what? I haven't listened to those yet. And so I unzipped them all, threw them all into a big playlist, and just put them on while I was working in my office. And this song, several gave me chuckles, and he's a wonderful performer and very clearly a very smart writer. I love his style of humor, but this song just lifted out in full relief of, whoa, this is just so funny. And my son is very much into pursuits related to mathematics and engineering and stuff, and that's increased the relevance of those topics to me naturally. As he's pursued that course of study, I'm more interested. So yeah, it was just like the perfect time to encounter the song again, and I thought, I wonder if I could do something with this. And the original idea was just going to be, when I first decided, okay, I'm going to make this, was in the early fall of 2023. And I just thought, okay, AI art has come along now to where I could just, do a slideshow, but just do something that kind of illustrates some of the humor of this. And so I just started experimenting with that, of generating different images based on pieces of the lyrics or inspired by the lyrics or whatever. And just the more I got into it, the more I thought, no, this needs more. This needs more than what AI is going to. So then AI became very much secondary. It's just like, all right, AI is going to be the filler, the mortar between a few of these bricks. But mainly, I want to portray the people in this story. I want to portray that. Yeah, so that's just kind of what led me to it. And it was right around the time when I was finally getting serious about iClone as a tool. I had bought iClone 7, I want to say the previous November or December. They were basically giving it away right before iClone 8 came out. They were almost giving away iClone 7. It was so cheap. And I didn't have time to work on it at that point, but I just thought, that's just too cheap. I'll just go ahead and get it. And thinking that I'll probably get a little bit of a discount on iClone 8 if I buy iClone 7. And I was right. So right when iClone 8 came out, I bought that, but I still didn't have a game plan. My only skill set was fiddling around with video games, and I still know how to use Movie Storm, which is, it's like the steam locomotive guy at Henry Ford's house. It's like, what the hell am I going to do with that? So I set about constructing. Sorry, this is so long-winded, but
No,
I
it's
set
great to
about
hear it.
I set about constructing a plan where I could the advice that I was getting from people that I would ask was, you just got to get in there and just learn it, and that's fine. And I didn't want to it's not that I didn't want to learn it. It's, I want to start producing now, even though I don't know enough about iClone to produce what I eventually want to produce, the more detailed stuff. But I don't want to wait. I just don't have the patience, or frankly, I don't have I don't have enough miles left on my odometer to just take a year off and do nothing but study how to make films again. I want to start making stuff now. I've got the juice, I've got the inspiration. So why can't I produce something now, but be learning it too? And so I thought, well, how can I do that without coming off like just a total amateur, and not in the good way? Ricky has kind of reacquainted me with the word amateur to where it's not a bad word, but I didn't want to be amateurish, and have it be these clunky. I've already done that. That's my look at. You want to see that? Look at my early films. That's all my early films. It's just clunky, barely figuring it out stuff. I still have a standard of quality I want to hit, but I've got a skill deficit right now. So the plan that I came up with was to evaluate all the film ideas of what I want to produce, because I've gotten to a point now where I'm not adding anything more to that list. I have enough work now to keep me busy through the rest of my able years. Believe it or not, I don't have to add anything new, and I've got. But the thing is the stuff towards the end of that list is like feature length production, major deal. And there's full series of really complicated stuff. I can't do that right now. But I've got other ideas that are less demanding technically, but are still worth making. Because that was the distillation that I had to go through, was which of these ideas are even worth making. And I threw away probably 75% of them to come up with the list that now will keep me busy the rest of my life. That's how many, it's a ridiculous amount of ideas of what to produce. So now everything that I'm making is stuff that has passed that gauntlet. So I structured this order of what I want to produce, and Lobachevsky fit in the right place at the right time for me, in terms of I will have developed enough. I knew this when planning it. By that point, I will have developed enough skill in these key areas of iClone to be able to pull off what that film needs. It fits perfectly in that slot, so that's where it goes. And so there was something much less, that was less technically complicated prior to that. And the one prior to that was even more simple. And the ones after it get more and more complicated. You understand what I mean? There's I was building a hierarchy of sorts. Lobachevsky fit in there. So some basic animation and, really mastering the compositing, using content out of iClone and things like that. Those were all keys to this. And then I had been experimenting a lot with, I started off with Midjourney, but more so Leonardo, AI, Runway. Runway was a big help on this one for some of those more bizarre scenes and backdrops and stuff. So yeah, and then the decision to make it all black and white was that was actually a pretty late game decision, but I feel like it was the right thing to do. It's actually not black and white, right? It's more like a old print sepia tone look. Yeah. But essentially it was wash it out to black and white and then color correct it to that to make it all look consistent. That was a very late game decision. It wasn't that I didn't envision it that way from the beginning, but when I got all the video in the editor and started, putting them side by side, I thought, it feels pretty disjointed here. Oh, that's why, because of the color. So, yeah, but having done it, then it was like, oh yeah, this is what this should have looked like all along. So, yeah, I guess that's a nutshell of why the song touched me enough to do something with it. I was very cautious about the fact that this is somebody else's song, and I'm not doing a whole lot of. There's not a whole lot of that in my agenda for what to produce going forward. It's a lot more focused on original stuff or stuff that I know I have the rights to use. This, it was so recent, and I thought, oh, geez. But I felt pretty confident that I could take a chance and believe what I'm reading, that this is indeed fair game to use. Got a bit of a scare when I uploaded it to YouTube because YouTube flagged it.
Oh,
This is after it's completely done. The whole film is produced. And fortunately, I'm uploading stuff to YouTube about 4 to 6 weeks before it hits the air. So I had time to respond, but I upload it and it gets flagged for the music. The YouTube Content ID system on the audio. And I thought, oh my God. And so I started planning for, well, the alternative is I create a cover of this song and try to sync it exactly to his, which I could have done. I don't have quite the piano chops he does, but I could work around that. And I could definitely perform it vocally. It wouldn't be as good as accent as him, but again, it's one of those things where you do what you got to do. But meanwhile, I just responded to YouTube and said, hey, according to what I see here, here, and here, this is public domain. And I should be able to use this in my movie. So basically, I filed an official appeal.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they responded a few days later and said, yeah, you're right. Objection lifted.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well,
that was pretty neat. You don't hear those stories turn out that way very often, but
no,
in this
you
case,
don't.
it was property that indeed that was his intent, is all the recordings that he has any domain over are pure public domain. So,
But listen,
yeah,
thank you
it
for
worked out
sharing
well.
that. That's really interesting. But you know, the bit that really strikes me about, because I get how you've done it and I get why you've done it, but it's the layers of the interpretation that are just outstanding from my point of view. You know, the notion of plagiarization, the time period of the 50s, the Cold War, the Hollywood scene, you know, the tale of non-discovery of research, if you like, and the political intrigue, because it's the selection of images and the characters that you capture so beautifully, which I think is a really great match for Lyra's sense of humor. I will just say one more thing. Sorry, Damien, I know you want to sort of jump in on this as well. I just want to say one more thing. I understand that Lyra gave up songwriting in the early 1970s because he's must be what now, mid 90s?
Yeah, he's 95, 96, something like that.
Yeah, okay. But I was reading a bit about him, and apparently, following the award of the Nobel Peace Prize to then US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in 1973, he actually said political satire became obsolete, meaning that it's actually quite hard to be funny about serious stuff. And I think that's really, you know, I think it's absolutely true today. It's really hard to be funny about serious stuff. So to capture that humor in some new way, I think is really an achievement. And I think that's exactly what you've done here. What you've done is captured political satire through this film. And I actually think that if Lyra saw this, I'm fairly certain he would enjoy the interpretation. And I also think it should be held up as an exemplar to others too, because of the way that you've managed to portray political satire. So many congratulations on this, Phil.
Thank you.
It's a
And
great piece of work.
it would be so amazing if he did get to see it. And I set out to make something that I thought, okay, if by some crazy twist of fate he does see this, I don't want him to be. I want to make it clear. I want the film to make it clear that I'm not making fun of him.
Oh no, I
that
don't
I'm not
think
making
that's
fun
it.
of his song, and that it's truly an homage. You know, it's not. And it was tough. I can appreciate political satire, but I could also appreciate how prickly it can be in our current climate.
Mhm.
And you know, in our current climate, where you know most of the people that you run into now have have very little memory of the Cold War and what it really was. And I mean, even for me, these images that came through in the film, I didn't live through that.
Mm.
My parents did, but I lived through an era where that era was being portrayed on television. So really that's what I got. So I have no idea if it's authentic, but it certainly is authentic to the view of that Cold War era that I had. And this sense of my wife is from former USSR. So we joke all the time together in good humor about, whenever the villain on the movie we're watching ends up being Russian, and I'll just turn to her and I'll just go, Russians, of course. Isn't it always? Of course, it's the Russians, because we've had many frank discussions about the propaganda machines that we both grew up under pointed in opposite directions during that time, as children of the Cold War. So, so I wanted to be respectful of that and try to be authentic to that era without dredging up old offensive stereotypes. I wasn't setting out to not offend anyone, but I also didn't want it to be about making fun of Russians, to put it bluntly. It wasn't that, because that's not what's funny about the song. The song itself has so many more layers.
For sure.
And yeah, there's some tongue-in-cheek reference to a corruptibility that, frankly, all honest USSR citizens know about. They all know it was there. I mean, that reference to the plagiarize and all of that, you would get a knowing chuckle from anyone who is honest about the way things were. But to me, the extra layer there is that wasn't just in the USSR at all.
Yeah.
That it's one of those where one side accuses the other of what they're actually doing. You see that in political spheres and all over the place all the time, right? The left accuses the right of something that they're actually doing, or vice versa. And so this was kind of that type of joke of, he's portraying this Russian without what we would call scruples, but there's kind of this sense of, this is how it works,
Yeah.
and not celebrating it, but also not being too quick to be judgmental about it, because it's not something peculiar to Ivan. So I loved it. It struck me that his approach to humor about that, at a time when he had every excuse to be bigoted and disrespectful. In the 50s, nobody would have objected to him being bigoted about the Soviets. They would have clapped him on the back for it, But no, this wasn't that way. This was kind of, it was fun about the people that we're all being told we're supposed to think of as our enemies, as the evil empire, and all of that. So I thought, well, I want that. I want my film to have that same tone.
It's poking fun in lots of different directions simultaneously, actually. It's really good.
Yeah. Without poking fun, without the emphasis being who's to blame for this, that, or the other. It's just, so I'm so glad that I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I definitely did. Damien,
I really
what did you
enjoyed
think?
making it.
I really enjoyed it as well. I just want to add a little bit to Phil, you were just saying that he wasn't being really nasty about the Russians, and that was actually probably more risky in that era, with the McCarthy era.
In the Red Scare, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're not being nasty about the Russians, are you one of them? That he could have got himself into a lot of trouble for making this song for the wrong reasons. Like
he really walked a tightrope there, I think.
Yeah.
Knowingly. I think he knowingly walked that tightrope. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a bit like when they introduced Chekhov to the original series of Star Trek. It's kind of along those lines, really. Oh,
Mm.
I was actually going to ask you about how you made it, but you kind of answered that already.
Well, is there
Uh,
a particular scene or shot or something that
I was just I was interested in how you kind of combine because obviously recognize the iClone elements
yeah,
to it. So I was kind
a
of wondering
lot
how
of
you
iClone rendering over the alpha background.
right.
You know how you
Okay.
can render out the second pass over with just alpha channel,
Yeah.
and then I brought that together. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Like I don't think there's no sets built in iClone.
Right.
Everything is a backdrop. Um, it's AI art. The very opening shot of that theater is a photoshopped image. Actually, the Russian letters on the marquee, it says Nikolai Lobachevsky, but in the Cyrillic alphabet.
Yeah.
Little hint there that like people like my wife will catch, and 99% of people won't even know is there. But that scene, and then I tried to do the moving cars as a runway shot, and it just mangled the cars turn into like beetles as they move across and stuff. So I threw that out and just animated a parked car and one moving car in iClone over alpha and just put it on top. So there's a lot of that, a lot of just layers on layers, most of which were planned well in advance. Some of them, the tech that I wanted to use wasn't working, and so I just and that was all part of the learning technique that I was using for iClone. Was I'm going to focus on a particular set of skills that I want to flesh out and not worry about set building. As you've seen from stuff I sent you about a week ago, I've now moved into the set building phase, and it's crazy. But at that time, I wasn't worrying about that. I just wanted to get to where I could relatively control the characters well and get a clean image because I knew, I mean, compositing is going to be a part of several things that I'm going to work on in the future. And I've never been really pleased with how that's worked for me in the past. It's been, you know, Nine Inch Nails only, for example, lots of compositing there. And it was just a nightmare to get it to work right because it was all green screen. You know,
You always get
this
that
is
little outline, don't you?
It was really hard. It just greatly multiplied the work to get that to not show up, and then sometimes it's like, hope no one notices that.
Yeah, I
I just
tried.
decided I don't want that anymore. I want I want to be the perfectionist that I want to be,
Yeah.
but you have to be good enough to be a perfectionist
For
to
sure.
do that. If you don't know how to fix the stuff, then being a perfectionist is just suicidal. So that's what I've been setting out to do is finally learn how to do this stuff right. So this was a fun part of the journey for that.
Well,
I think my favorite scene, if I may, my favorite scene is when he describes the name of the paper that he wrote, and it's all the words. That series of runway images of Riemannian manifold and equations moving and stuff. Oh my gosh, I probably spent I probably spent 12 hours on that 8-second section of the movie. It was so fun to make because I knew what I wanted it to do. And I mean, there are dozens of hours of footage generated
yeah.
for that to get it just right. And I just loved it. Like I actually paid for a runway membership just to do that scene. I used up all my credits just to do that scene for like 2 months. So yeah, I had so much fun making this. So
It
yeah, I'm
shows,
glad you liked it.
and it shows you put a lot of work into it, and I know you're still learning iClone, but it doesn't look like this does not look like a film made by someone still learning iClone.
Well, yeah, and that's some nice sleight of hand
Yeah.
because I am, and still am. But that was the reason for this plan is I just wasn't really interested in going on the journey of, hey, everybody, watch me be a toddler again. Because there are areas that I'm really strong in, and so why can't I lean into those?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm going to keep showing everyone this arm, while this one that's really weak is I'm going to be pumping iron in the background, that kind of thing. So I guess that's a really, really stupid analogy, but you get the idea.
It makes sense. And I also don't blame you for not wanting to spend a couple of years learning how to do it and not
I just
producing
don't have that
anything.
kind of time.
I
I
don't have
just
that
don't.
patience either. When I
No.
get a new piece of software, I want to figure out the basics and then make something with it,
Yeah,
even if it doesn't
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then try and make it look as good as possible. I'm not
I've
going to
got
just
too many stretches of my life that I look at and go, what if I had just
mm,
invested my time in X ways, you know?
yeah.
I've decided this, whatever this chapter is that I'm in now, that's not gonna be how I look back on it. You
Good.
know, I might not end up making a dime in terms of the whole, being an actual YouTuber or doing this for a living or whatever, but okay.
You want
That's never
something
really
you
what
can.
this. The only reason I want that is to be able to keep doing this more,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not because I need it. So I
You
And
guess
also
that's
that's
a
have.
good attitude to have, Phil, because
yeah,
like I said at the top of the last episode that we were talking about the news items and whatnot, it's high time this creative ecosystem had a rethink.
yeah,
Um, and whatever you get out of it, you should do it for the love of the creative side of it, which is, that's the great strength of you guys as creators. It's
yeah,
lean into that.
yeah,
And I am sure that the other stuff will sort itself out one way or the other, eventually. But I can only see it coming out in clear favor of the creative folks in the ecosystem because I genuinely believe that there is the desire to have them integrated more explicitly within the economic ecosystem. Certainly in this country, there's that movement going forward at the moment. Uh, I'm actually pushing for that another level in the work that I do formally, as I am in the European community that I'm involved with, as I am through this forum too. So um, it's high time that that was the focus, and it leaves you then the free hand to do the creative work that you're so good at. Anyway,
Excellent work, Phil, on this film. It came as a
absolutely.
thank
complete
you.
surprise
Just
when
as
I
a
saw it.
question, I've got another question.
Yeah.
When are you doing the next one? Well, I guess you're already working on it by the sounds of it, but when can we expect a teaser of it?
Well, uh,
Or don't
okay.
you want to
So,
commit?
well, yeah, it's a matter of which next one.
Oh,
I'm trying to. I release a new film every Friday.
oh yes,
Um,
of course, yes.
so on YouTube every Friday is now some of those this past year have been remastered reissues of old ones that are worth bringing forward. So like this past the last week of December was Google Stooge. That's the last one. I have no more in the bin of remastered ones to re-release. So it's all new stuff from here forward. But yeah, I would just say just stay tuned to the YouTube channel. And every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, is a new release of some kind. Typically a short film. This year, 2024. After I've finished a few more shorts here, it'll be full production on a comedy series. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun year, fun several years. So
Good. Looking forward to seeing everything you do.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you, Phil.
I'm having a blast.
Good.
It shows. I guess
Oh,
over to
I'm the
you then.
host, aren't I?
Yeah,
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 I guess
yeah. It's your show, mate.
I just wanted to. If you guys had some more stuff you wanted to say about me, I wanted to give you time to
Yeah,
do
what have
that.
you got to
Even I
say
just
about me?
well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and yeah, we've missed Ricky. Hope that he's found the cactus he's looking for, and we look forward to his return. We will have some special episodes from time to time this year. We've got some interviews that we're trying to pull together and work up. So we'll be doing that, and trying to keep the format fresh and everything. But stay tuned for more great machinima work coming this year in 2024. So on behalf of my co-hosts Tracy and Damien, and in absentia Ricky, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.